Good evening and welcome to the IMechE webinar on utilising the IMechE to progress your career. I'm Oliver and I will be your host for this evening's discussion. This webinar is part of an ongoing series of support activities at the IMechE for individuals undergoing career changes and developments. To find out more, visit the IMechE web pages, search under Careers and Education and the Webinar Hub. This is being recorded and will be available on the IMechE YouTube channel. This event was organised by Lara Mallet, who's with us in the background. She will be filtering through your questions for the Q&A after the round table. So please do ask questions. Please ask your questions using the Ask a Question function in the auditorium. We will endeavour to answer all your questions during the Q&A. So on the panel this evening, we have three members of the IMechE who have benefited from and contributed to the IMechE in different ways. Our first panel member, Becky Sims, was last year's Engitech of the Year. Becky, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Becky and I'm a graduate manufacturing engineer at MBDA Missile Systems. I started there in September 2019 after finishing my mechanical engineering degree at Loughborough University. I've been involved with the IMechE since leaving school, really, being registered whilst at university, and I'm now halfway through my chartership application on the Monitored Professional Development Scheme. And as Ollie said, I was the Engitech of the Year with the IMechE last year.
Thank you very much, Becky. Our second panel member, Robert Armstrong, is a fellow of the IMechE. Rob, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi there, yes, I'm Rob. I work for Leonardo Electronics Division. I've worked there for about 15 years, joined as a graduate, and I've had various jobs in manufacturing and mechanical engineering. I became chartered in 2015 and a fellow in 2019. And I now am the sort of industrial liaison with the IMechE for Leonardo at Luton, where I'm the head of manufacturing process capability. So I look after all of our manufacturing processes and make sure they're fit for purpose.
Thank you, Rob. And thirdly, our third panelist, Dr. Helen Mees, trustee and former RSB chair. Helen, welcome.
Thanks ever so much, Ollie. Yes, I'm Dr. Helen Mees. I'm a chartered engineer. I was chartered in 2013, although I've been a member of the institution very much like Becky since I was at university, going back to the early 90s. My work experience is across sort of academia and industry, having spent 15 years at Loughborough University, and then latterly in the defence and now in the healthcare industry. And I'm now CEO of my own consultancy company, and I look after people who are in setting up startups or doing early stage research to help them get their medical devices to market.
Perfect. Thank you, Helen. Thank you all and welcome. Now I'm going to ask each panel member in turn to give us a quick run through of how they've utilised the IMechE to progress their career, after which I'll add a little meat to the bone with some questioning. So Becky, you mentioned scholarships. Perhaps you'd like to tell us a bit more about scholarships.
Yes, so whilst I was at university, I was an IMechE undergraduate scholar, which meant that I essentially was supported through my time at university by the IMechE. And it was something that I essentially wouldn't have been able to afford to go to university or enjoy my time there without that funding. Another few things that the IMechE do for me is that my registration helped show proactiveness with my professional development. So when it came to applying for jobs, and it also helps me to build my network as well.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks. And Rob, I know not quite tied to scholarships per se, but you've had some experience with some Apprentice Automation Challenge and Formula Student, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I took part in Formula Student back in 2005 when I was at Cardiff University. Got a great deal out of being part of that team, and really I think set me in good stead as I went into my career in industry. But since I've been at Leonardo, I've also supported the Apprentice Automation Challenge. So we've entered teams over the last 4 or 5 years, and this year we did well enough to win the competition, which was a really great achievement. So I expect we'll talk a bit more about that challenge later. A couple of other things that have helped me are mentoring. So certainly being able to take on the role as of a mentor, I think, is a really good skill to have, and also very rewarding. And also as a hiring manager, I find when I'm looking through CVs, it really helps to be able to understand what being a chartered engineer means when I'm looking for sort of potential candidates for roles within our business.
Brilliant. And Becky, you mentioned there that you mentioned about career path and guidance, and some of the bits that Rob's touched upon there. You feel that the competencies, have been quite helpful for your job hunting, haven't you? Or for your career path progression.
Definitely. So I'm on a graduate scheme at the moment. It's a 2-year graduate scheme, and it allows me to do a number of different placements. So I've used the competencies that we have to meet and those that I'm lower scoring on to direct my line managers in terms of where to do my next placements. So if some of those competencies I'm not being able to meet in my current placement, I can say in my next one, can I be put in a role where I can achieve those? And I'll be able to do that when I come off the graduate scheme as well. So it's a way of directing your career path to help you achieve that. And because companies can be quite supportive of it, they see it as a good opportunity for you to do that.
Right. And Rob, you've seen that from the other end, haven't you? From the hiring end, you've seen that the competencies are a sort of really useful way of being able to gauge someone's experience.
Yeah, that's right. I think when you're looking to hire people, I mean, we do get a lot of CVs, and being a chartered engineer or incorporated engineer or Engitech certainly helps people's applications to stand out, because you know that they've been through a sort of rigorous assessment of their competencies, that they've been through that development activity, but also that they have a really sort of broad range of capabilities. So on one hand, it's a sort of a proof that they are a competent engineer, but also alongside that, you have the other skills that go with it, such as project management and understanding, people management, as well as communication skills and these kind of things. And I think also it shows a sort of a passion for the engineering profession, that people are willing to sort of put their time into developing themselves. And gain a chartership. It's a reasonable amount of time and effort that gets put into that, and I think that's a really good thing for people to be able to show on their CVs.
Brilliant, thanks. And speaking of sort of those competencies, Helen, I know you've mentioned that the competency development is something that you've benefited from as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's been a useful exercise to be able to explore, just as Becky was saying, the opportunities where you may not have been able to develop skills in certain areas, but actually it gives you an opportunity to kind of target those things and be able to say, actually, look, this is what I need to do now to be able to fulfill this requirement. And I think what's been useful for me has been being able to try different things and work within different areas of engineering, and also within the institution to be able to develop those competencies, so that when I came to apply, I was able to say, actually, yes, I've done these things, and it's not just about the work aspect of what I do, but also the outreach and the involvement with the institution that also adds to those competencies that I've developed.
Thank you. One of the things that you've worked on are reports and policy statements, and I found that as a member, I've benefited from those in a way that you can't from a lot of other places, and I think what I've enjoyed about that is the wide number of themes that are covered. But always highly topical, whether it goes from healthcare to decarbonisation to manufacturing. The reports also offer solutions, which is something that really appeals to me as an engineer. We see so much in the media that is either criticism or comes in hindsight but doesn't really provide any alternative solutions. And I know one of the health reports I read recently was talking about some new positions that you might be able to introduce within the NHS to cross some of these bridges, and some of the advice given to government on data-driven advice on skill shortages, or where funding bodies might be better placed to place their funding, especially on sort of cross-cutting industrial scale, where you go, we're not just trying to benefit an individual company, or we're not trying to just put out a report that benefits a single company. We're doing it for the industry as a whole. So as somebody who's benefited from those, that's what I've enjoyed about them. But perhaps you could say a thing or two about creating some of these reports.
Well, yes. I'm in a slightly odd position to most members of the institution, in that I've been both a member of staff and a member of the institution. And for those of you who don't know, I was a member of staff from 2013 to 2017. I was one of the policy managers. So, Ollie, you mentioned one of my reports recently, which is really nice to hear that you enjoyed that. But I think where that benefits members is, it's quite circular in a way. I think it enables members to not just read about what engineers are doing in the field, but actually contribute. And I think this is a real aspect for me. What I get the most out of being a member is really about that networking, that linking with other people who are like-minded, and in my case, the medtech industry, working with people within that field to produce pieces that can then not only raise the profile of engineers, but also have an impact in terms of policy development and strategy. And that's an area that I'm very passionate about, being able to talk on behalf of engineers. So I think that side of things, being able to get involved in the development of strategy and the development of policy within the institution, is actually a valuable skill for any engineer. When you look at what Becky's doing now in her early career, those being able to present and write about things and talk with authority are all skills that as a young engineer, you're going to have to learn. And, so to get involved in the institution in that way, I think has really helped me. It's built my confidence. It helped me become chartered. And I think that's a great opportunity for members to get involved in.
Absolutely. And Becky, you're mid-chartership process at the moment, aren't you?
I am, yes.
So how do you feel that's going? It was competencies were mentioned earlier. Is there a particular one that you feel it has highlighted that you wanted to work on, and you've been able to do so by telling your supervisors, here's one I need to do some work on? Is there a particular example you can think of? Or?
Yeah, definitely. So the C competencies related to leadership, leading projects and teams and those sorts of things, is something that in my graduate role, because I'm not in a supervisor role, I'm not able to do as much. And upon highlighting that to my line managers and my company, the opportunities become available for me to do a level 3 apprenticeship with the ILM as a team leader and supervisor. So through that apprenticeship, I'll be able to get different knowledge and skills, and it will prepare me for a team leader role in the future, which will then help me with those competencies that I need for chartership. So it's just one example of the way I've gone. I really want to get on with my MPDS. This is what I need to do with it. And my company's come back and said, well, here's an opportunity to do it. So I'd really encourage any of you that are in a similar position, just say it and just ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And there might be a brilliant opportunity out there that comes as a result of that question. Brilliant.
Thank you, Becky. Rob, you must have seen similar things going on either during the apprentice challenge or with people that you've hired. What would you say out of the competency structures? Is there a particular one that you're keen on, or is it just general proof of competence that's helpful?
Yeah, I think a good thing with the apprentice challenge is that it's about designing a product And for a product, it needs to have a market. You need to think about different roles that people have on the team. You need to get engineers working alongside business people and business apprentices. So, as a whole, it actually ticks a lot of the boxes beyond the engineering side of things, which they all want to dive into and solve the problem. But actually, they get a much more rounded experience, because actually they get a bit of leadership, they get a bit of networking, they start thinking about costs and how they're going to produce it, how they're going to market it, how they're going to sell it. So actually the Apprentice Automation Challenge gives that really sort of broad range of skills quite early in these people's careers, and we actually make it a compulsory part of our apprenticeship. All of our second year apprentices do it, and we find that it gives them a really good grounding in a safe environment to go through life cycle management processes, for example, as well as sort of the enjoyment of going into competition against people from other companies. So I think a challenge like that, and there are other challenges that the institution offers, does tick a lot of the boxes for competencies.
Yeah, brilliant. And that sort of competency sort of falls hand in hand, I suppose, with CPD in general. From personal experience, I'm part of a few committees that organise technical lectures, and it's great to be able to put my IMechE hat on and invite people from all other parts of the industry, but also people who I suppose would technically be deemed rivals as far as my industry is concerned, and be able to bring these people in that are just passionate about engineering and come and have them talk to us and have a Q&A session that, often, I mean, the lectures are great, but often the Q&A session is just as good. And it's always really insightful to learn from that sort of dialogue rather than just online tutorials or reading textbooks. Helen, you've done your fair share of committee membership, haven't you? How's that been for you?
Certainly have. Yeah. Well, I guess I like organising things, and maybe that's just in my nature. But yeah, I was very privileged to become a trustee for the institution in 2018, until 2020, and I chaired the RSB. For those of you not familiar with the various strategy boards within the institution, and there's been some changes of late because of obviously the governance we're going through at the moment, but the RSB is really focused on, it gives it away in the title, Regional Strategy Board. They represent the voice of the regional members across the UK. And as such, they drive the strategy, if you like, in regards to what members want from the institution, but at more at a grassroots level. So they take the overall strategy of the institution and they delve down into that to make it relevant to members in their local communities. And I, as I said, I had the privilege of chairing RSB for a couple of years, and they're an incredibly passionate group of people. There are 16 chairs of the 16 regions who come together to really drive what is going on, and they're very, very passionate. And in fact, all of the committees that make up the regions are very, very passionate people, and they really want to contribute. Not just, as you were saying, Ollie, it's not just about professional knowledge, but actually to share experiences and learn from other people. And the institution, I think, has been very good at that level to engage with other institutions. So you're not just talking to IMechE members, but you're actually able to engage with the Institute of Chemical Engineers and the IET and many, many other organisations. And it gives you such a much more broad scope of what's going on in your profession, in your particular field, but also a more general experience of what engineers need to understand in today's world. And things are changing so fast that being on board with one of those committees, getting involved, whether it's starting at your regional level, working up through the ranks into sort of trustee board level, and then into one of the strategy boards, is a great opportunity to really see how the institution functions, because it's a charity, so it's very different to working in industry, but also how some of those experiences can be then taken into your work environment. And that's been very beneficial for me in starting my own business and taking that leap from being in a company to managing the finances and all of the governance of my company and everything else. I've learned a lot of those experiences and lessons from being a trustee. So that for me has been a great experience.
Thank you. One of the things that sort of strikes me there is really how vast the IMechE is. There's this sort of element, you must have interacted with not just people around the country, but all around the world. And there's this, I'm coming back to the reports, but in terms of what the IMechE does, one of the things that's so nice about it is that where you have different governments around the world doing different things, or even the same government within our country changing its tack every 4 years, there's this sort of steadiness that comes with what the IMechE is proposing through just here's facts, here's what's happening all around the rest of the world, and here are all these other people in the IMechE and hubs all around the world talking to each other about this stuff and making sure that we don't just do what's popular at the time. We do whatever the data suggests we should be doing, learning from things that are happening all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate. Rob talks about his involvement in the Home Automation Challenge, and I've been a judge in that competition, and it's a fantastic experience. But what has developed from UK-based events like the Design Challenge, for example, has now become international, and many of the chapters across the globe are now taking on these competitions and doing them in their region, whether that's Oceania or India or Hong Kong, all over. And that is really fantastic to see that what starts off maybe as a localized thing, maybe in the UK, then becomes an international competition. I mean, one of the ones that stands out is Speak Out for Engineering, which is now an international competition, and young engineers are coming together to share their thoughts and experiences of what it is to be an engineer in their country and in their locale. And I think that is a great opportunity as well. Certainly at my age now, I don't feel I had those opportunities when I was a young engineer. So to see people like Becky, benefiting from opportunities to engage globally with our network of engineers is a really fantastic opportunity.
Becky, how did you feel that the Engitech award sort of opened things up to you, or were there people that you interacted with that you probably wouldn't have if it wasn't for the IMechE?
Mm-hmm. So a biggie for the Engitech award was the fact that I got it for my STEM outreach work. So I do a lot of work with schools and colleges and young people to get them inspired about engineering. So the award was good in that respect because it enabled me to push that further and expand my network and say, look, I got this award for my outreach work. Does anybody else in my network want any support with outreach? Another thing as well is because my company were aware of it and it went out through our comms, our internal company comms, a lot of our apprentices and graduates came to me and said, oh, hang on, you're Engitech accredited. How do I go about that? Is there anything I can do? How do you get involved? What are the academic requirements? What are the competency requirements? So that award basically enabled me to spread the word about Engitech. And because of that, we've got more young people within our company who are interested in being involved and signing up to the IMechE. So it's kind of a win-win, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So what utilities do the IMechE provide that assist with? Because I know STEM have a lot of utilities, but what does the IMechE provide in terms of support for education and outreach?
So for me, the network is a biggie.
Yeah.
So I know quite a few people through the IMechE, or because I've had involvement with them as my previous IMechE liaison roles. So the network is a biggie because it gives me a lot of people that I can go to and say, what are your thoughts about this on outreach? What are your thoughts about this? So that's the biggie for me in terms of outreach.
And the network is that is great. I think when we've done a few career events, and so we've had the IMechE leaflets and bits and pieces. And I know that sounds a bit silly, but actually going to these events and being able to hand out a little card that has, I think they do different series and packages of them so that you can aim them at different age ranges as well. But to be able to go with, I know it sounds silly, but fancy flyers and bits and pieces that you can hand to people and say, hey, here's a robotic arm. Have you thought about what goes into that? Is that something you're interested in? Here's one on medical supplies. Here's one on the automotive industry. They sort of catch a lot of the industries that really capture children's imagination when you go out to these events. So that for me has been quite helpful. Rob, what are your thoughts on educational outreach as far as the IMechE is concerned and utilities?
But there's something about it that's good for us. At Leonardo, we do a lot of STEM outreach, and we're very keen to sort of promote the mission of engineers. And it's actually a great opportunity for some of our developing engineers to take on that responsibility and learn a bit about engaging with the next generation, and promoting engineering as a career actually goes quite a long way to helping with some of the competencies, particularly what we call the E-competencies, around promoting careers in engineering, but also gives them an opportunity again in a space to develop some of their management skills. So on some of the things that we do in terms of outreach, they might have a small budget to manage, whether they're doing sort of schools work or university outreach, as well as perhaps a team. Also summer placements. We have a lot of summer placements, and our developing engineers have tended to manage that activity. So they'll do a lot of the sort of work around bringing them in, and then overseeing their projects is another good opportunity for them to sort of build some confidence in terms of developing other people. So I think all of that STEM outreach gives more opportunities for people to develop that competence, which then they can then take into their career as they become people managers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Helen, I was just thinking as we were talking about this that we talked about materials and we talked about networks, but one of the other things I'm sure you must have tapped into for your reports is some of the resources that are available in terms of information, whether that be archives or the library, or what's your experience of being able to access that information, and how do you go about doing that in the best way, I suppose?
Well, I mean, the library resource that we have at the institution is just incredible. If you haven't been to the institution, I appreciate that at the moment it's closed, but if you do in the future get an opportunity to go, I do recommend it. The library resource is amazing, not just because of the extensive collection of books that they have, but also the fact that they can help you with research, which is great. So there's a lot of material online. They have access to the wider networks of libraries across the UK as well. So that enables you to gain access to quite a lot of material. And there's also a lot of not just book related or text related material on the web, but the library, the librarians at the institution have been able to put online lots of historical documentation and material that you can refer to as well. And certainly a lot of members have found that very useful. I think what's great about the service and what I've benefited from is being able to speak with the staff within the library sort of section, and there's a beautiful study area as well. Again, for those of you who haven't been, it's a great area to go and study if you happen to be in London. But it's really helpful to get advice on where information is coming from as well, because they're very up to date with new documentation that's coming out and so on. And they help people everything from PhD writing right through to writing a textbook. There are many members who have been writing books, academics who go and use the library because they're able to access so much material. So from that point of view, it's a great resource, both as a young engineer and in your later career as well.
Thank you, Helen. We've talked a bit about what the IMechE does for us, but Helen, I know you wanted to say a bit about driving the direction of the IMechE and how we're all we're all members of it. We do have the power and perhaps the duty to steer it in the way that we think it should be steered.
I've been very privileged, as I mentioned, to be a trustee of the institution, and I put myself forward for that, knowing that it was going to be a very difficult responsibility, and it was indeed. It's not something that you take on lightly, but I felt very passionate about ensuring that our 120,000 members in 140 countries had people who were listening to them and ensuring that the institution moved forward into the 21st century. And that for me was a very important part. And because of where I'd been in terms of both as a member and as a member of staff, I had a really good understanding of how the institution functioned. So I felt very keen to be able to represent the membership, to be able to speak on their behalf, and make significant decisions and contributions to help develop that. And I was at the very early start, I suppose, of the governance process, which is now really, really getting to the nuts and bolts of changing the way the institution works. And that's under the sort of chair of Kerry Mashford, who's been very instrumental in this. But there have been dozens of people who've been involved in this, all members, all who have had the passion to make sure that, again, young engineers are going to gain the benefit of having an institution which has got another 170 years in front of it. And I think that is something that I would encourage all members to want to strive to take part in and try and contribute to. And there are many strategic boards now within the institution that you can apply to be on. We've just created a new strategy board, if you like, that are going to be fundamental in ensuring that the other boards drive the institution's strategy forward. And I think Colin mentioned, because in an interview recently, they'd had like 150 people apply for that. So members are really keen to be involved. And I think if it's something that you want to do, if it's something that you want to experience and grow your professional sort of experience, it's a great opportunity to be really part of those sort of roles within the institution. I definitely encourage anyone to go for it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Helen. I'm going to move on to the Q&A, but I won't until I've allowed you to plug the IMechE podcasts, because I know otherwise I'll get into trouble. So please tell us more about the IMechE podcasts.
Well, I guess that this came about because of my position in the trustee board, and as a trustee, I used to go and visit many regional boards, and what was really great about it was I was getting a lot of comments from young engineers who were saying, we need to hear more about what's going on. It's not just about the PE magazine and getting the occasional email. We want to hear more. So I put forward the idea that we really needed to have some kind of podcast. It's the thing these days. And so the institution said, okay, well, go on then. So I am now the host of the IMechE's podcast, hence the huge microphone there. And yeah, it's on Podbean, but you can find it on all the major podcast channels. So please go and have a look. We produced 5 episodes this year, and they've been last year, and they've been incredibly popular. And we're rolling out our New Year's worth of a podcast starting in February. They're the first Monday of every month, and they're on different subjects each month, usually to do with the divisions and groups, the different technical topics, if you like. And we're going to be covering everything from brewing to space. this coming year, and hopefully, fingers crossed, if we get a chance, we'll be visiting the challenges live and doing some live shows from those as well. So anyone listening who wants to contribute to any of our shows this coming year, please get in touch. It's podcast@imeche.org.
Right, brilliant. I'm glad I asked. Thank you very much. Right. Well, thank you all for that. That's been incredibly interesting. And now we get to answer the questions we weren't prepared for. So here we go. So we've got one in here. My organization doesn't pay for registration. Do you feel you get your money's worth with your membership? Becky, perhaps you'd like to start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's so much different stuff available with the IMechE. It's what you make of it, really. Other people have already mentioned access to the library, different resources, different webinars, such as this one now. I think the fact that you can say that you're a member of the IMechE carries a lot of weight, really, as well. It shows that you are passionate about your career and your personal development. If you're working towards any kind of professional registration, again, it shows that you want to develop yourself professionally and personally. So I definitely say it's worth paying for. Also, the number of people that you get to meet as well, whether it's on training courses, in-person seminars, I know there aren't any of those at the moment, or just from people you happen to get talking to who say, oh yeah, I'm in the IMechE as well. So yeah, there's a lot there to make the most of.
Brilliant. And Rob, that's probably an easier question to answer for you, isn't it?
Yeah, so well, I'm in the fortunate position where my company pays for our membership if we're working towards chartership or if we're mentors. But it's also, we look at it as we want to make sure our business gets value for money out of it. So I'd certainly point to training, and that's something I've been encouraging our members to do over this period where, you know, classroom training isn't really possible. And it's more difficult to get people engaged with training. Training budgets are reduced, so really getting people to get along to as many of the sort of webinars, and a lot of them are free. I think that's a really great opportunity to sort of take advantage of what's on offer. So we're certainly keen to make sure people get their money's worth through that kind of thing.
Good. While I've got you, I'll ask you the next question. Some organizations don't recognize registration. Should I still mention it in my application for jobs? What key areas would I mention about my registration if it is not recognized?
Yeah, I think a really good opportunity there for you if you're applying for a job is to explain what it is that you've done and why you've done it. So it really sort of opens up that conversation. That you've sort of gone through this process, that you have had to show evidence of your competency that's been assessed by a chartered engineer, and that's very difficult to argue. So you know, I think that in itself kind of opens up an opportunity to explain what it's all about being chartered. And also it gives you good evidence to use in an interview. So I know certainly we use competency-based interviews where we're looking for examples from people's careers of where they've done, you know, employed a certain skill or used knowledge in a certain way. So I think it does sort of give people those answers to the questions really at their fingertips.
One of the other ones here, I think develops on that theme. But there's a question here from somebody that has recently become chartered, and they're interested in how it might help them progress within their organization. And really their question is, you know, at what point, you know, at what age with the CEng does it start making a difference as far as your career is concerned?
Yeah, I don't think it's an age thing as such. I think it is about competence, and it's about being able to demonstrate that you've got a breadth of knowledge and understanding that's been assessed. And I think as engineers sometimes we don't blow our own trumpets enough, if you like, and there's an opportunity there for people to say, look what I've done, and the evidence is there.
Yeah, now, I must admit, from personal experience, having written up what your competencies for your chartership was incredibly helpful when I went up for promotion. Making sure that those things had all been listed in a way that was I suppose was categorized already in here's a competence, here's an example of how I've shown that competence, and it's signed off by the institution.
And it's taking that step back and thinking about, well, what have I achieved? Because that's something else we often don't do. We're sort of on to the next thing and on to the next thing. So with writing reports, we can take a step back and really look back at what we've achieved, which can be rewarding as well.
Yeah. And I'd say that, that's definitely what I've experienced personally is that you go back to write what you tried to do or what you've achieved in the year, and you've forgotten everything that hasn't happened in the last 2 months. Whereas I found that the report writing and the chartership process instilled in me this sort of habit of, when I got to the end of a project that I was, not necessarily, one that I was pleased with or one that took a few months to get through, I'd write a quick bullet point just to say, this is what I did, and then move on. And as you say, you completely forget about it. And then when you get to the annual review, you can pick those points up, and it's as if you've got a brilliant memory.
And importantly, those things that went wrong that you learned from and overcame.
Yes, absolutely. Helen, sorry.
I think as well, Ollie, I think it's important to share the fact that you have become chartered. Often, we go through the process of chartership, we go for our interviews and so on, and then we don't tell anyone about it. I think it's very important to not just share with your immediate line manager that you've become chartered and so on, but actually share with your other colleagues, and even share that with senior managers, because I think it's important for them to know that you have participated in, developed yourself, and been rewarded by your peers at this status, and that recognition needs to be there, that you have a professional standing within the engineering community, and I think that's important to not, as Rob says, we're very good at hiding these things under a bushel and not necessarily sharing them, and I think that's very important for you to do. The person that's asked the question, share it with those people, let them know that you become professionally chartered and that you're wanting to progress your career. I think
absolutely. And I'd say from personal experience, I'm fortunate that one of the committees that I'm a part of is based at my work, and so that instantly I joined it prior to chartership. It was, my work there was in part what helped towards me getting my chartership, but it meant that the people I was around, range from the levels all the way to the top at my work, are people that I've sat down with on a monthly basis to talk to, and have seen me develop these competencies and grow. So there's an ability with, your IMechE hat on to suddenly start talking to people that otherwise, even within your own company, you probably wouldn't get that sort of time with, and definitely not the sort of open conversation that you have with when you're in one of these IMechE committee meetings, helping each other out to organise a lecture for the good of engineering and for something that you're passionate about. Becky, this next question's for you. Becky mentioned about some scholarships via IMechE. How can those be approached for further learning? And are they restricted to engineering or could extend to courses like MBA? Well,
yeah. So there's all sorts available. You can have a look on the IMechE website under scholarships and awards. There's the opportunity to apply for grants to attend conferences. And there's also an area on there that says skills and CPD awards. So basically you can apply for financial support to help with developing skills and continuing professional development. And there's all sorts of examples, but it could be things such as technical skills courses to foreign language courses, returning to study courses, things to do with communication and presentation skills. And then there's obviously all these specialist seminars and lectures that the IMechE offers themselves. So there's lots of support available. I just do a bit of a plug to go and have a look on the website under scholarships and awards, and you'll see all the different ones on there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Becky. So here we have a question. Very interesting discussion so far. Thank you. Rob, Helen, as chartered/fellow engineers of the IMechE, do you still use the competencies to help you direct your careers? Helen, would you like to answer that first?
It's a very good question, actually, and one which often I think young engineers worry about, because they think, well, once I've got this chartership, once I've done all this, this thing and had my interview, what am I going to get out of this? Actually, I do feel that you do continue to develop your competencies over time. And in fact, you are now expected to record your continued professional development as part of the Engineering Council requirement. So indeed, you're constantly looking back at those competencies and having to align what you're doing with those competencies to demonstrate that you're still professionally developing. So I think, even if that's going to a conference or a seminar, you can still get your CPD certificate and add that to that list, and you continue to keep that record going throughout your professional career. So yes, even running my own business, even being the CEO of a company, I still have to maintain that CPD, and I still have to demonstrate that I'm using my knowledge in an effective way that is benefiting not just my clients, but wider society as well. And that's all really part of it.
Thank you. While I've got you, Helen, there's a question here on self-employment. It's quite a long question. I won't read the whole question out, but essentially, somebody's chartered. Somebody's looking to be chartered. They've done 4 years, and they've now moved to work for a self-employed contractor. Can they still become chartered? I suppose, what is your advice to somebody who's looking to get chartered as a self-employed individual or working for a self-employed engineer?
Well, the answer is absolutely, of course, yes, you can still become chartered, even if you're self-employed or like me. I'm self-employed. The important, I think there'd be a couple of things to pick up on something that Becky said earlier on. Is make sure that you're looking at the work that you're doing and aligning that to the competencies, I think, is very important. The other thing, and I think Rob will probably nod profusely at this, is to get a mentor, somebody who maybe it may not be in your industry, maybe in full employment compared to yourself in self-employment, but find somebody who you can really get to know and to share that experience and to talk through and act as a sounding board for developing the application, because that is a really useful thing. I think when you're self-employed, when you're kind of on your own, it's very easy to get locked into your own little bubble, and I think you need to be able to break out of that. And so finding a mentor who can guide you through the process, and the institution can help in that way. Again, I go back to some of the committees and local regional groups particularly, and I'm sure Laura would chime in with this. Get involved in those, find a mentor within that community who can really talk you through it, and that will really benefit you. Thank you, Helen.
Rob, we've got a question here from somebody in management. So I became chartered in 2019, now enjoy mentoring apprentices develop themselves, targeting Engitech status. Continuing my own development within the management structure, do you have any advice or experience on how CEng status can support this ongoing managerial development?
I think one thing to consider would be fellowship. That's certainly a route that I went down, because that really looks more at how you engage at a strategic level. So as a manager, you want to be not only sort of running your team, but also thinking about how you develop your team and your business. And also there's quite a bit in there about things like adopting new technologies, So I think there's good opportunity there. So I think that's good to look at. As Helen said earlier, the CPD I think is really important, and that's certainly what I find is that I need to be constantly looking at am I still developing in all the right areas, and am I challenging myself, and am I continuing to grow, and I think not only does that make us better managers and better engineers, but I think it keeps us engaged and excited and interested about what's happening. I know certainly in my own role at the moment, I'm very involved with things like digitization and introducing new technology into the business. And I think what I've done through my chartership has really sort of put me in a good position, and I've gained those skills. And what I really look for in the people as they're working towards chartership is that those kind of skills, whether it's bringing in new technology, or whether it's managing people or managing budgets, or giving people appraisals, all become second nature. And it's not only it's not a task that they did once to get to tick a box for a competency, but it's actually something they do as part of their day-to-day job. So I think that's quite an important role as a chartered engineer and manager, is that we're continually sort of refining those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks, Rob. Becky, question about IMechE registration. So currently working towards IMechE registration. I'm a project engineer with stucco engineering and augmented cooling towers. On Becky's point regarding STEM, I was a STEM ambassador during my university degree conducting seminars at Glasgow Science Centre, attended a number of schools in my local area. However, due to work commitments and family life, I had to give this up. Will this affect my application, as I didn't continue this into my professional career?
So I wouldn't say that it would completely derail your application. Being a STEM ambassador isn't a compulsory part of IMechE registration. There are different ways in that you can develop those competencies. For example, if you became a mentor to somebody within your own company, you're still helping them support their development, and you're doing that, achieving those leadership competencies. The one thing I would say, though, is a big plug for outreach. If you do get the opportunity or the time in the future, it's good to get involved in that. But there are other ways that you can meet those competencies.
If I might add there, Ollie, as well, one of the things it mentions about commitments to family life, one of the ways that you can still do outreach and still develop your STEM competencies is to become a governor of a school. And in fact, we see a lot of engineers who are now with families and those sorts of commitments. They can't get involved necessarily in doing outreach or commit to being on committees and things, but do have time to be involved in their children's education. And that's a great opportunity, and something that the institution has been encouraging for some time now. So if you're really struggling to find things to do or commit to things, think about maybe becoming a school governor.
Thank you, Helen. Helen, while I've got you're on these podcasts and reports and policy statements. What is the IMechE doing to encourage growth in the emerging technology sectors in the UK, in particular those around renewable energy? I'd like to redirect my career in this direction.
Goodness, that is quite a big question, really, because there's two things in one there, I suppose. The institution does an awful lot to encourage the growth of emerging technologies. Certainly, when I first became a policy manager, I was head of engineering in society, and that was because there were so many things coming out at the time that that didn't fit under our common umbrellas, of typical engineering, that we were having to expand on that. And indeed, I was doing all kinds of things from graphene, and all of those sorts of things that were space and things like that. I did some pieces of work on satellites and so on. But one of the areas that was growing at that time was healthcare. And eventually I took over the role and set up the healthcare theme. And I think that has grown from strength to strength. And in fact, the biomedical engineering division within the institution is rapidly growing. We've now got a young members committee for the first time, which is huge, and a great opportunity for students who are doing biomed engineering, and it's a growing field. So I would say in terms of the first part, the institution does a lot to encourage growing and emerging areas of tech, and not necessarily just in the mechanical field, but the mechanical, the electromechanical, the informatics mechanical, all of those things that are now becoming interdisciplinary roles that engineers have. So I think if you're looking to redirect your career, certainly there's an awful lot going on in the renewables market. Check out some of the reports that have been written, and certainly have a look at Jen Baxter, who is the chief engineer of the IMechE, because that's her area of field of expertise. She's done a lot of work in this area, and if you go onto the IMechE website and have a look in the policy section, you'll see an awful lot of the work there that might inspire you to take that leap into a new career.
Thank you, Helen. Becky, a question directed at you. Hi, Becky. Beyond becoming a member, what would be your advice to a second-year mechanical engineering student looking to advance their career whilst at university?
I love questions like this. It shows people are keen. So first thing would be get some experience. So whether it's summer placements or a year-long placement, just get some work experience and use that as an opportunity to find out what you do and don't like doing. If you do a summer placement and you absolutely hate it, it's no great loss, and you know that you don't want to continue with it afterwards. Or you might find something that you absolutely love doing, and that'll set you up for life. In terms of the IMechE specifically, if you do any work experience, make sure that you record it. So, for example, if you do a placement year as part of your degree, that can count as a year of your so if you go on to MPDS in the future for chartership, it can count as a year of that. And you're also eligible to apply for Engitech as well. And the biggie would just be get involved in everything. So if you have the opportunity to become perhaps an IMechE student liaison officer at your university, then try doing that. That's something that I did whilst I was at Loughborough, and it introduced me to a lot of people within the IMechE and helped me get to where I am in my career and to basically doing this session today. So just get involved in everything you can, and it'll also be a good break from your degree as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We've got 2 minutes left. I think that's probably just about enough time for thank yous. So thank you, Helen, Rob, and Becky, very much for all of your input. I'd like to thank Laura, who's been running around behind the scenes, and Fiona for tech support. Now, if I can do this properly, you should all see a slide. Yes. Okay. With any luck, you're all looking at a slide right now. Otherwise, apologies. Thank you again to our panelists and to you, our IMechE viewers and our listeners. We'd like to wish you all the best for your ongoing career development. Do have a look at the IMechE Careers and Education section for advice. And if you have any ideas about future webinars, please contact us at the IMechE. If you're interested in registration, the email's here, I think, bdm@imeche.org. So many thanks again, and goodbye from me and our panelists. Thank you.